got plenty to talk about. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo is here, as I say. Welcome to Monday Morning, Rafe. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Trump is on the front page of the Daily Telegraph as well, saying that wind power is a con job, condemning windmills blighting the landscape. One of the things he did, I think, before anything really happened, when he first arrived in Britain, he was asked about, you know, how he was or what's going on, and he basically went on a rant about immigration ruining Western Europe, which I don't know if we've got that clip, but we'll come back to all of what Trump did over the course of the weekend. First of all, a lot of joy on the front pages this morning. I know football's not really your thing, but it's nice to see England winning something.
Look, I'm not a fan of football, I have to say. I'm not a fan of women's football particularly, but, you know, gosh, there are very few chances we get in this country to celebrate victories and achieving stuff, and this has been undeniably a great feel-good factor. The nation always gets behind, you know, an England team, whatever the sport it's in, from lacrosse to whatever, and undoubtedly this has been a great story of triumph over adversity, and, you know, when a team is able to actually not only win, but win for a second time and to retain a title, that's undoubtedly a cause for victory, celebrations, particularly because, of course, this is an unabashed celebration of England. The English, of course, are the only nationality within these isles forbidden from celebrating itself. When the Scots and the Welsh do it, it's called progressive nationalism. When we say we're patriotic, we're called racist. So no one can say that this is racist, of course. A great victory. We're going to have, of course, a celebration at 10 Downing Street today, and we believe also today there'll be the famous open-top bus victory tour.
I think that's on Tuesday.
Oh, it's on Tuesday, is it?
I think so.
Right. Oh, yes, it's, tomorrow is actually, yes.
Yeah, because
anyway,
I think poor old Keir Starmer was going up to Scotland for his sort of, you know, bi-monthly
he's got to
spanking
pay
by Donald Trump.
to the Emperor.
Yeah, exactly right. He's got to go and sort of try and pay homage. I wonder if he can produce a letter from his pocket from the captain of the England football team. I've got a letter for you.
Another time he'll take the knee, probably.
Yeah, no doubt. But, I mean, a lot of people pointing out last night, wasn't it nice and refreshing to see Chloe Kelly, a very English young woman, saying how proud she was to be English? Because, again, it shouldn't be a difficult thing to say as a concept, but very few people actually say it in this day and age.
And it's always sport that is actually usually able... People talk about reclaiming the flag. I always think that's offensive to, you know, if the flag flies on English country churches across this country, it's not the preserve of the right, but whatever opportunity we can use to reclaim the flag is great, and sport, of course, is something which really is, more than the monarchy, more than anything else, the one thing that unites a nation together. So it's only fitting that that was done, and let's hope that there are more English flags. There was a Union flag flying on my apartment building last night, because obviously people want to celebrate. Get the St George's Cross out. Let's celebrate Englishness for once.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, there was, of course, by a bizarre coincidence, despite the fact that I think it had something to do with the football. There was a social media post doing the rounds yesterday of a guy who had a load of England flags in the back of his truck, and he was pulled over by the police because they thought he might be some kind of far-right maniac about to go and launch himself at some hotel protest. In fact, he was just going to a football fan zone.
Well, I always remember when Ken Livingstone gave funding for St Patrick's Day parade but refused funding for St George's Day parade because it was racist in London, the capital of England. I never forget Sadistic Khan has forbidden black cab drivers from flying the English flag on their taxis as well. I would hope today would be... I would hope today would be one day when he might relax that requirement.
Well, it might well be. Let's have a look at Chloe Kelly talking last night after the game.
And the fans, they've been incredible the whole tournament, and I'm so proud to be English.
There you go. She said the words, and nobody arrested her.
Brilliant.
So, you know, all the police are too busy, you know, watching people's social media, of course, to see what they might be saying in support of England or against migrants. This is a new elite squad of police, apparently, who are going to be spending their time trawling through everybody's social media to see what you're saying about migrant hotels.
We're very good at doing moments of silence. I think we should have a moment where the whole nation comes and sings Jerusalem, or They'll Always Be in England. That'd be rather nice, wouldn't it?
That would be nice. Absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, because, funnily enough, I've just written a piece that came out overnight in the Telegraph about the dreadful state of this government and how Keir Starmer can't seem to understand that there are people in this country who want him to do something about the problems in this country. You know, he spent more or less the whole weekend tweeting about Gaza, talking about how he wants to save the children of Gaza. He wants to airlift them out, bring them all to Britain. You know, he wants to find another coalition of the willing to improve relations between Gaza and Israel. And yet, as he's doing that, there are literally multiple demonstrations up and down the country, from Glasgow to Manchester to Aldershot to Epping to Bournemouth to Birmingham, I think, as well, to Altrincham in Manchester. You know, people really, really fed up with these migrant hotels.
Well, let's admit
he doesn't address it.
Keir Starmer is a coward. On the domestic front, his policies are essentially, a millstone around the neck of the Labour Party. The one area where he thinks he still has some kudos is on the global stage. So it's no surprise that he's so keen to play up his foreign service activity. And of course, oddly enough, the irony is his greatest champion is Donald Trump, who spoke out favourably in front of him. So as much airtime as he can get with Donald Trump is great. But this is a very important point, because one former Tory advisor said he's only going to get around 20 minutes to actually have Trump's ear. People keep saying he's the Trump horse whisperer, as if he's got some magical power over him. I'm sorry, when Macron recognised Palestine, Trump just said, well, I don't care what the French president thinks, it means absolutely nothing. So when you've got only about 20 minutes to actually make your case to Trump, what are your priorities going to be? Are they going to be British interests, or are they going to be foreign interests? And then we can see clearly where his interests lie. But you're quite right. Even Donald Trump is speaking about immigration. I would hope...
In Europe.
I'm not so concerned about what Starmer's going to say to Trump. I'm more concerned about what Trump is going to say to Starmer. And I really hope he keeps up the pressure on online censorship, the Online Safety Act, and on immigration. I would love him to give a right dressing down to Starmer on those two issues, perhaps behind closed doors. I wouldn't be objecting if he tore him down like he did to Zelensky on these very issues and embarrass him.
And we saw him yesterday with Ursula von der Leyen, who flew in to do what can only be described as a pretty good deal for America, and not such a great deal for the EU, where they're going to get 15% tariffs as opposed to the 10% that we're getting. But according to the front page of the Times, Keir Starmer will seek today to use a meeting with Donald Trump to increase diplomatic pressure on Israel over humanitarian aid to Gaza. And people are saying to me anyway, why doesn't he take care of what's going wrong at home? What he shouldn't be doing is offering yet more airlifts. I mean, we've had enough airlifted people, thanks very much indeed, from Afghanistan. We don't need any more airlifted people from Palestine to come and live here, because, frankly, we haven't got any room for them. Because looking more and more at the Epping situation yesterday, more and more politicians calling for the hotels to be closed down, and these migrant hotels, they're going to have to move these migrants somewhere, aren't they?
This is something no one's talking about. We even had Fraser Nelson of the former editor of The Spectator backing the Labour government when it said they've closed a certain number of hotels. They've halved the number of migrant hotels that have closed, as if those migrants have magically disappeared. This idea was like, oh, it's not as big an issue as it was because there are fewer migrant hotels. Yes, rather than being in a hotel in the middle of a park somewhere, they're now living next door to you because they've been moved into private accommodation.
Nobody's been sent home.
They're in flats, they're in HMOs. There's been a small increase in deportations, but there are over 100,000 people in private accommodation, 77,000 in flats and so forth, 30,000 in migrant hotels. Don't get swayed by the diversion tactics about talking about migrant hotels. Town centres and city centres are being destroyed by people in these publicly funded housing. Because
and it's going to get worse, because there's now talk of them commandeering, former kind of, teacher training colleges, disused tower blocks, all sorts of other, empty accommodation, which is not currently being used because it can't be. It's going to be repurposed. Governments are going to give money to local councils so they can either lease back these buildings or refurbish them and own them. So it's going to be more millions and millions of pounds, and moving more migrants into accommodation that ordinary people in this country can't get into.
And that's the thing. Local people are on local housing waiting lists, and they're being piggybacked by people who've literally arrived within the last 10 minutes. And the government said it wants to get tough on making Britain less attractive than France in terms of cracking down on the underground economy and so forth. One of the reasons they're coming is because they're getting room service, and not room service, but they're getting 3 meals a day, and they're getting hotel accommodation. Pushing them into private accommodation isn't going to remove the deterrent factor, isn't going to remove the attractiveness factor. You need to put them into temporary refugee camps. I've said this for a long time. There were discussions about using MOD sites for Nightingale asylum hotels and so forth. You need to actually do that. You need to ensure that people realise if they come to Britain, they're not going to have a cushy time of it at all. When the Poles were here after the Second World War, there were 250,000 Polish refugees, children and women, unlike what we see now here. They were housed for up to 15 years in Polish resettlement camps. Now, if camps of the 1940s and 50s levels of quality were good enough for women and kids for 15 years, I think young men of fighting age, the same age as our British Army, can certainly be put up in Nissan hats.
They did the same with Hungarians when they came out of Hungary in 1956. They put them all in basically effectively internment camps up and down the country, which were old military barracks, and then nobody complained about it.
No,
they were very happy to be here.
My mother's cousins were living in these refugee camps in the 50s for about 10 years, met she met her husband there. They got married in the camp. They were never complaining about it. This was a chance in life. Where did we go from basically giving people shelter to giving them 5-star accommodation? I don't understand when that leap happened.
Yeah, well, it was when somebody worked out they could make a bloody lot of money out of it. I think that was part of the problem. Let's have a look, though, about what Keir Starmer was doing this weekend, because while he has not addressed yet at all the problem of, the migrant hotels and what is going to actually happen to them, and whether he's going to respond to the mass demonstrations that are going on now up and down the country, here's what he had to say.
The appalling scenes in Gaza are unrelenting. And I know the British people are sickened by what is happening. The images of starvation and desperation are utterly horrifying. The denial of aid to children and to babies. The fact that we've rebuilt the UK standing on the world stage enables us to rally international action behind real, purposeful, practical solutions. That is what we've done with the Coalition of the Willing in support of Ukraine. And that is what must happen in the Middle East, building a new international coalition behind a plan to end the suffering, now and for the long term.
Yeah, he likes the coalition of the willing, doesn't he, to end the suffering. He doesn't mention that campaigners are actually saying that some of these pictures that have been used as propaganda by Hamas about the starvation are actually, just that. They are propaganda. And in fact, one of the famous pictures of the starving boy is supposedly a boy who's actually suffering from a very debilitating disease, which makes him look the way he looks, He also doesn't seem to know or mention the fact that the reason there's no aid going in is because Hamas are stopping it.
Yeah.
So a lot of Israelis very upset about the fact that the West and many of the media have just bought this Hamas propaganda line, hook, line and sinker. And now, apparently, once again, Israel is bad guy.
Yeah, no. Look, the scenes we've seen are harrowing, and my heart, if they are true, my heart goes out to all those people. Obviously, we must do what we can to help them, but I'm not an expert on the quality of these videos.
Yeah.
We know in the past we've had several people dying in the
But there's loads of aid in Gaza, is the point.
But what I'm saying, we've seen in the past, several actors dying regularly, pretending to be victims in the past.
Right.
So why would we assume that the veracity of these things are suddenly improved now? Yeah. It is the case that they are now basically yielding to pressure and allowing airlifts. The IDF are allowing protected corridors for UN convoys to come in, and at night time also that they're allowing deliveries to come in. So aid is being allowed to come in, and I think, of course, there does need to be proper investigation by investigative journalists, and there seems to be very few of those actually looking into the veracity of these videos.
Well, the ones who are looking into it are telling a different story to the one that Keir Starmer's telling, which is basically buying into what everybody in the BBC is saying, that this is all the fault of Israel.
Well, that's what I mean.
Nobody ever blames Hamas for doing anything.
That's what I mean. Where is the Panorama and Newsnight investigation into all of this? I doubt we're going to see one at all. And actually, I would rather that Keir Starmer had an emergency cabinet meeting on the migrant hotels.
Yeah.
I would rather he had an emergency cabinet meeting about the small boats that are coming over here, rather than on things that we really can't change.
Yes, exactly, because there was so many. Also, did you see, by the way, just to make matters even more ridiculously bad, John Healey, the Secretary of State for Defence at the weekend, told us that we were ready to go and fight over Taiwan. So we're apparently, not only war ready for the Russians, we're now war ready for the Chinese. I mean, what on earth is he talking about?
Yeah, this is remarkable. I mean, the traditional policy has been essentially that you don't commit to, give vague generalizations. We will support Taiwan or whatever. Joe Biden broke that and said we're going to be there for the defence of Taiwan, but no other European country has said that. Even Australia, which is where he's visiting, and they're closer to China and Taiwan than we are. Right. They've never committed to helping them militarily. Why Britain alone, outside of America, feels it's got the heft to take on the other superpower militarily, and is beyond me. Yes, you've got to, of course, have a coalition of the willing to show strength in the region to try to deter China, and we've seen, Japan, and I think there are about 15, 16 countries that are basically making these sort of gestures in the South Seas, in the South China Seas. But at the same time, come on, let's be realistic. We're a small island far away. There's very little we can actually do.
We don't actually have any submarines in the water at the moment either, so I mean, that could be a bit of a problem if we want to take on the Chinese Navy. But there we are.
Neither do the Australians, it seems.
20 minutes past 6. Jeff says this cabinet recall. The priority is illegal migrants dumped in hotels and HMOs across the country, not Gaza. But no, Starmer couldn't give a monkeys about that. Sharon in Staffordshire says, morning, Mike and Rafe. I really am not a fan of football, but these Lionesses have changed my mind. They have made me feel proud to be British. And that can't be a bad thing, can it? And Bill in Cheshire says, the Lionesses win is fantastic. Isn't Starmer lucky? The Supreme Court gender judgment has given him clarity into who and what he will be shaking hands with. Convenient. His cabinet meeting on the same day as the Lionesses parade. He'll no doubt hijack the PR for himself. Well, he'll probably try. Well, at least he now knows what a woman is. Thanks, it's been pointed out, so he can actually watch the women's football knowing that they are all indeed biological women.
Yes, one just wonders if they hadn't had these sort of definitions and if football associations had been more willing to accept trans people in, how many of that team would actually have been trans?
Indeed.
Because we know that probably over half of them would have been trans, and then we'd really have been in a pickle.
That would have been a pickle, yeah, absolutely right. 21 minutes past 6. Coming up, we're going to talk about the situation with small boat perks in Birmingham. There's plenty of them. And how many people came yesterday with the aid of the Border Force? This is Morning Glory. Welcome back to Morning Glory. It is Monday, the 28th of July. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo is here. We're looking through the papers. We've got plenty to talk about. And we're going to look at all sorts of things coming up in the next few minutes. But first of all, let's get a voice note from Andy.
Good morning, Mike. Andy in Portsmouth. I'd just like to congratulate the England women's football team on their fantastic victory yesterday over Spain. It's actually nice to have some good news for once. And I'm hoping that the England captain, after saying she's proud to be English, doesn't get arrested for saying that, because it won't surprise me. Anyway, have a good week, Mike. Cheers, mate.
Good to hear from you, Andy. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, wouldn't it be ironic if the old thought police suddenly turned up at the dressing room door? Hello, hello, hello. I'm sorry to say that we have to take you away for questioning on the grounds that you have made what can only be described as hate speech by saying you're proud to be English.
Ironic, but not surprising.
It wouldn't actually be. I mean, it really is incredible. Piece in the Sun, cops monitoring online chat. A new police unit has been set up to monitor social media for anti-migrant posts amid fears of riots. You know, they're not so concerned about the criminal acts that may be being committed by some of these young men, as you say, who have been, you know, foisted upon this country and put into communities where, you know, the communities have turned on them because of all the crime that's going on. They don't need to monitor that. They need to monitor the people that might be talking about it.
Yeah, and you know why? It's because we have a government that's obsessed with censoring people. We've got this new hideous online safety act that's come in.
So that came in this weekend, didn't it?
That came in on Friday, and it's all been about pornography on them. If you watch the news, if you watch the BBC, you would think the only thing that this affected was the ability to watch, you know, porn in your bedsit or whatever. Unfortunately, that's not the case at all. What we're talking about is the censorship of anything that's deemed to be of an adult nature.
Right.
That includes scenes of people being arrested, you know, in these protests outside the Britannia Hotel.
Right.
It includes, for heaven's sake, Katie Lamb, respected member of Parliament, who gave a very passionate speech about the impact of
in Parliament,
where you can say anything with speech. You get the parliamentary privilege protecting your speech, and spoke about the rape gangs. Now she tweeted that has now been censored by X, which is forced to obey the laws of the land, and only if you've proved to be over 18 are you allowed to see this message now. Now that's deeply chilling stuff, not least of course because the Labour government says if you're 16 you can vote. But if you're 16, you can't watch an MP give a speech in Parliament.
It's a bit difficult to vote for.
That's a bit difficult to vote for them, you know.
Yeah, that is mad, isn't it?
You can join the army, but you can't actually listen to words. They're hurty.
Right.
This is absolutely ridiculous. It is very chilling. And the reason, of course, people must understand the attack on free speech exactly mirrors the rise of mass immigration.
Yeah.
Because the only way you can keep this multiculturalism bandwagon on the road is by silencing the truth tellers.
Yeah.
Anyone who says the emperor has no clothes, even if it's perfectly decent and respectable speech, has to be silenced. You mustn't allow people to see.
But I think the problem for the government is now going to be the genie is out of the bottle, well and truly out of the bottle. You just have to look at Epping yesterday, right? There's a piece on page 11 of the Sun. More protests held across outside migrant hotels across the country as public anger over the issue continues to rise. And actually, a friend of mine was actually at the protest in Epping, a very well-respected member of the community, a mother with her husband. She said, I wanted to go down and just show my support. She said, you've never seen so many police. Everybody was put behind cages, and then the lefties were all, you know, shipped in again. But because they couldn't really make any inroads, they shouted a lot for about 45 minutes or an hour, and then they were all taken away again. And so the people have had enough, I think, in this country.
The people have had enough. And, of course, the Labour government are trying to essentially downplay this and say, well, the real root cause of this is deprivation in these communities. I'm sorry, Epping Forest is a prosperous community.
Yeah,
it's really a market town. It's got wealthy houses there, £1 million houses are there. And you just have to look at the people who are protesting. These are not far-right thugs, as you've got the people in The Guardian and elsewhere talking about. And there are pictures on the spread on page 6 and 7 of the Mail showing the two camps. And you can see on one side decent mums and dads concerned about their children, you know, the backbone of England, essentially. And on the other side, you've got people who've been bussed in, all carrying the same signs as opposed to the homemade signs of the mums and dads, an orchestrated campaign, because they can't find enough people on the ground locally to support their side. And they've got to find a few of these maniacs from around the country who will go to the opening of a paper bag if it's basically a far
And they're carrying
enterprise.
these placards that have obviously all been made at some central location where it says the far right are not welcome in Epping. And strangely enough, none of these people are actually from Epping.
And none of those signs were made in Epping either. They're made by...
So they had to go home early because they didn't want to miss the last train. You know.
And you can just see everybody in this looks like they should be on a Just Stop Oil protest as well.
Exactly.
These signs are made by the organisation Stand Up to Racism, which I think Diane Abbott is the head.
Right.
And they're funded by Socialist Worker and by the Unite Union.
Yeah.
So this, let's understand, this is the far left talking about the far right, and there's no far right present here as far as I can see.
Exactly right. And again, it says around 300 anti-migrant protesters were penned in on one side, while 500 counter-protesters were in another fenced-off area. 500 police officers from 31 forces across England and Wales attended. This is just in Epping, right? And guess how many arrests they made? 3. 500 police, 3 arrests. I mean, what a complete and utter waste of money, you know? But I thought last week, this hapless Essex chief constable, you know, who says he's not going to resign because it's not all about him. Last Thursday, they put in a dispersal order which prevented anybody from outside of Epping coming in. So how come that's changed and he's now allowing them back in again?
And they're keeping the two groups far apart, which he didn't before. He escorted the far left right into the middle of these protests. But it shows
it's an absolute shambles.
It shows you the response to, you know, we're at the 1-year anniversary of the Southport protests and riots, and you can see here their attempts to try to stop something like that happening again. But the people who are paying the price for it are well-meaning people who are being essentially denigrated and slandered and demeaned as being far right. And these people are as far right. For heaven's sake, there's a 75-year-old female pensioner there. Yeah. I'm sure she's not wearing bother boots and braces, is she?
I really don't think so.
But, of course, the real story here also is that this is happening in Middle England. So we've had the Police and Crime Commissioner for Essex saying they're in the wrong place. This is a market town. Well, I'm sorry, where is the right place? Are you saying that the Red Wall is the right place because it's working class?
Yeah.
Everywhere is effective. Whereas the one hope I do have is that as you've got, you know, it's harder to think of a better way to destabilise a country than to parachute in large numbers of single males from culturally incompatible cultures. And they're now dotted around the country, not just in the old spots. And it may be that it takes something like this to wake up people who would have voted Lib Dem, who would have voted Labour, into the reality of what's happening on the ground.
Because you can't ignore it anymore, right?
You can't ignore it.
And once again, you've got 120 arriving in Dover. It's on page 9 of the Mail. Scores of migrants continued to arrive in Dover yesterday, making a mockery of Labour's promises to smash the people smuggling gangs. And I think a story came out at the weekend about the ridiculously low number of people in any of these gangs who have actually been prosecuted. I think it's lower than it's ever been. It's the lowest number of prosecutions under Keir Starmer, despite the fact that that's what he was going to do, smashing the gangs.
And look, I've said for at least 2 or 3 years, smashing the gangs will never work. You know, business is business, supply and demand. You cut off one head of the Hydra, another one will pop up immediately as well. So, you know, you just have to make Britain less attractive than France as one of the core things, and you're not doing that by having hotels, by allowing people to still work so easily in the underground economy, in the curry houses and so forth. There's been a big talk about cracking down on delivery apps. There's a lot of restaurants who are hiring in their back kitchens. A lot of these people are working in those places.
Of course.
While walk down Brick Lane, I'm sure, will give you bucket loads of people who could be potentially...
You would have thought so.
And
Robert, I mean, everybody knows where to look.
Yeah, we know where they are.
Yeah.
And, you know, off licenses and all these sorts of places. But Robert Hardman's got a piece on the same page in the Mail saying, why don't we just arrest the driver of every migrant boat? Apparently they're not being arrested.
No.
You would think you want to take out the people.
Well, I think I said this. Yeah, I think I said this years ago. I mean, Robert Jenrick's put a tweet out yesterday saying Starmer claimed he smashed the small boat gangs. In his first year, less than 1% of small boat migrants were prosecuted for immigration offences. Another broken promise. And he's also, in the next sort of tweet that he puts out, the small boats are fueling crime and making everyone less safe. End a cover-up, publish the crime statistics by nationality and asylum status, and act to protect the British public. Because once again, you know, the state is attempting to you know, protect us by not telling us stuff.
And, of course, we had so much grandstanding when he was leader of the opposition about how easy it would be for him to smash the gangs, to get a hold on all of this. Last year, 37,000 migrants arrived. This year, we're only halfway through the year. We've already had 24,000 arrive. Is that completely backfired? And, of course, we must also say that we focus all the time on the small boats. Let's remember that actually the majority of illegal migrants are people who've overstayed. Quite often they're bogus visas. They've come here as Nigerian authors. Right?
I saw that story at the weekend. You can be a poet, author, or some kind of other wordsmith.
You can be a poet and not know it, and get a visa to this country. That's the reality of how things are. So yes, once again, a lot of distraction. We're focusing on migrant hotels. We should be focusing on migrant accommodation as a whole. We're focusing on the small boats. We should be focusing on illegal immigration as a whole. There are people in this country who could be deported so easily.
Well, how about this in The Sun? An exclusive by Ryan Parry. Bankrupt Birmingham Council is offering small boat asylum seekers hefty discounts on leisure activities, including swimming, golf and trampolining. The Labour Authority, which is now locked in its 7th month of a bin strike, you might remember that, is offering up to 25% off through its Passport to Leisure scheme. Migrants, many of whom have crossed the Channel by boat before claiming asylum on reaching the UK, can also get a 5th off on the use of council swimming pools. Now, I'm sure that's really great if you're taking your kids to a swimming pool and there you see in the corner a load of migrants, you know, sort of hanging about looking at your kids.
Yeah, because we know there's no issue at all about young girls with migrant illegal migrants coming over on boats. Girls in bikinis is not the thing you want to be hoisting in front of them.
The price of a trip to council wellbeing centres for fitness, yoga, squash and badminton sessions is cheaper. They even offer £1 tickets to Aston Villa matches for migrant children, as long as they're accompanied by a full-paying adult.
Let's just remember here, this is Birmingham City Council, which is bankrupt, right? They can't afford to pay the bin collection guys. They're billions of pounds in debt, but yet they've got enough money to take people to see Mary Poppins. Now, look, if I've come from Eritrea, or call me old-fashioned, I'm pretty sure a spoonful of medicine is not the sort of thing I'm going to be that keen to go and see, let alone trampolining. I mean, how many people from Sudan have even heard of a trampoline? I mean, this is absolutely remarkable.
And the last thing I want to... torture.
The last thing I want to give tens of thousands of young men of fighting age is martial arts classes. I think that's also bad.
That's not a great idea.
Unwise.
Let's have a look at what Donald Trump had to say about Europe's migration problem.
This, you know, they did ask me when I got off the plane, immigration, Europe has a tremendous problem, and we do too, but we've sealed our borders. We have nobody coming in, and we have hundreds of thousands of people being taken out, and the bad ones first, and I think we're doing a very good job of that. But we had, I mean, it literally registered 0 people last month. You probably saw that, nobody. And Europe has a very similar problem. I think they're going to end up in the same place. You might as well go there quicker.
So there he says, I mean, 0 people coming into the US. It's extraordinary that what he's done. Again, with the trade deal, we'll come back to that. He's done things which people said he couldn't do. He's going to ruin the world's economy by putting tariffs on everything. Well, it doesn't appear to have worked that way, does it? Let's get a voice note from Liam.
Morning, Mike. Liam from Kent. This whole Gaza business, I don't remember in World War II people out protesting all the innocent Germans that died. You know, it's just, I really don't understand it, and I'm kind of hoping you guys can help point me in the right direction of where these people get their logic from, that they want to recognise Palestine. Like, I mean, as far as I remember, on facts, Hamas were the ones that started this. Anyway, hopefully, Mike, you can give me an education. Have a great show.
Liam, thank you very much indeed. Yes, of course, we'll hear an awful lot from Starmer over the course of the next few days because it's a distraction from what the real problem is in this country. But if he keeps promising to bring more people in here from Palestine, you know, the public is just not going to wear it. You know, they just don't want to have any more people imported into the country. Thank you very much.
No, and your caller quite right. You know, all of these protests are about Israel's tactics. I'm sorry, you know, there is a legitimate man-made famine in Sudan. There is a civil war in Sudan, and there are people who are dying there in far larger numbers than they're potentially dying in Gaza. Where are the protests about that? Where's Bob Geldof talking about the man-made famine in Sudan? But of course, it's between two Muslim factions, isn't it? So of course, when it's Muslim on Muslim, they don't care. When Israel's involved,
what's been going on in Syria?
What's been going on in Syria against the Druze Christians there? But we had Saudi Arabia was brought up before the UN Human Rights Council for bombing children in Yemen. That was called a human rights atrocity. There were no protests over that. It's very selective what the Owen Joneses of this world do.
Yes.
We must see through it for what it really is.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's absolutely right. 6:38 coming up. We'll have a look at some other stories that are going around this morning. We've got Inspector Morse trigger warnings coming out. Apparently, the TV show may include scenes of crime. That's one. And then there's a Jewish comic who's been banned from the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. We'll tell you what all that's about as well. 6:39. Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:41. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10, of course. Let's get a new voice note from Phil.
Good morning, Mike. Phil from Kefalonia. Can't escape Starmer, can you? And his coalition of the Wallies. Let's face it, he's doing this for 3 reasons. 1, he's utterly clueless. 2, he doesn't want to talk about the migrant hotel situation. And 3, it's a sop to all those weird lefties that may switch their votes to Jeremy Corbyn. Absolute idiot.
Yeah, I think that is a problem for him, because in one of the polls that we saw just last week, if Jeremy Corbyn's party gets up and running properly, it could take about half of the Labour vote away from Labour, because all the lefties who are, of course, obsessed with Gaza and obsessed with, sort of not just getting rid of what they call the occupation of Israel in Gaza, but also getting rid of Israel.
Plus the Muslim vote as well, coming over as well. I tweeted on the weekend that Corbyn's going to be added to Nigel Farage's Christmas card list this year, because thanks to him, you're going to have a potentially even more chance of a whomping Nigel Farage majority coming into power. So I think more power to him. Bring it on, Jeremy. That's just what the right needs.
Yeah, Maureen says this. Morning, Mike. I love Rafe. He's so knowledgeable. Can you ask him, please, if there's anything we can do as a people to get this useless, dangerous government removed?
There are things I would love to do which I can't recommend publicly.
No, of course, absolutely
we'll
right.
have to wait for a general election,
now,
unfortunately.
You'd be forgiven for thinking that the NHS is just kind of running on wheels because it's it's no better or worse than it was yesterday. But we are now in day 4 of a 5-day strike. Started on Friday. I famously had an interview with the doctor, a junior doctor, last Friday, who wouldn't reveal what her actual salary was on the grounds that it wasn't relevant. I said, well, it kind of is relevant given you're asking for more taxpayers' money. But let's have a look at what Kemi Badenoch had to say about it.
Today, I'm saying very clearly, we would ban strikes by doctors so that they're in the same category as the army, the police, prison officers who died because of the last set of strikes. The doctors have had about 11 strikes in the last year, 18 months. The reason why doctors, not nurses, is because the BMA is becoming more militant.
It is becoming more militant, and there's some suggestion now that these strikes may continue all the way through until Christmas, because this is what happened last time. They wouldn't settle, they couldn't sit down with the government. Wes Streeting's got nowhere to go. They're obviously not going to, settle for anything other than what they're demanding. So presumably we're going to have this kind of, ragtag of picket lines from now until the end of the year.
Yeah, and of course it's the latter half of the year that sees the highest increase in hospital admissions, especially from the elderly. Death rates for the elderly are the highest in the dark months of winter. And let's remember here, they have secured already from this weak-kneed government a 28% increase. I'm sure most of your listeners and viewers would be, head over heels if they got a 28% increase, and they still want more. And let's remember here, 11 strikes in the past 18 months. Under no circumstances would that be acceptable for any organisation, really, let alone doctors. And, look, we stopped the police, the military and prison officers from striking. I can tell you that the life of the nation is not in the hands of soldiers on a day-to-day basis. Soldiers' lives, soldiers can go and strike, nobody would notice really. If doctors go and strike, the whole nation is affected by this. There's no reason that they shouldn't also be subject to the same restrictions under the 1992 Trade Union and Labour Relations Act.
I think absolutely right, because there will be people listening to this who have had operations cancelled, who will have loved ones who are waiting even longer now for procedures that they've already been waiting for like 2 years to get, and then suddenly there'll be a knock-on effect. And I bet you any money they'll come back out of this strike in a couple of days' time and announce the next one.
Yeah,
You know?
just remember, we've got people waiting in hospital corridors.
Yeah.
It used to be 4 hours was a long wait in the A&E.
Yeah.
Now people are there for 12 hours,
Yeah.
and it's a regular recurrence. People's imagine serious operations, the amount of, people just don't forget on a day-to-day basis what a missed operation means. Going to the lavatory, the pain, getting out of bed every day. I mean, people's lives are being seriously afflicted by this. It may not, and it's not just life and death, it's just the daily life becomes a torture for you, just so they can get a couple more pay rises out of this. I think it's obscene.
No, absolutely right. Bill in Cheshire says this: we will fight for Taiwan. Ha ha. As Healy told Corporal Jones, aka the army, who is supposed to be simultaneously fighting Russia, China, training the Ukrainians and be combat ready to be sent anywhere in the world. It's a joke. Hopefully Jones hasn't booked 2 weeks in Benidorm. If so, it's white flag time. I mean, it is mad, isn't it, the way some of this stuff is unfolding. Mike says, Peter in Fiona in Scotland, any organisation that knowingly puts its employees or customers at risk that then results in serious injury or even death may be charged with corporate manslaughter. Therefore, why is there not a charge of capital manslaughter or whatever the proper term would be when the government is knowingly continuing to do just this with migrant hotels? Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an argument you could make that you're putting the British public in some danger as a result of harnessing all of these people into one place.
Yeah, and that's the irony here. We live in an era where health and safety reign supreme, right? Everything has got a health and safety warning, or they've got unnecessary safety measures everywhere, except, of course, when it comes to knife-wielding machete gangs, except when it comes to people, raping our children, unfortunately. There's a complete lack of care. There's a duty of care the government has, which is completely forgotten when it comes to the migrant crisis.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? Let's talk a bit more about Donald Trump. He's on the front page of the Telegraph alongside a very big picture of Chloe Kelly, the England footballer, celebrating the win and scoring the winning penalty. President Donald Trump described wind power as a con job yesterday after playing golf in Scotland, saying turbines ruined the view from the 18th hole of his Turnberry course. It's a great place, Turnberry. I know it well, and it's one of the most fantastic sort of settings for golf in the world. And a lot of people hate the fact that it's now called Trump Turnberry because he bought it. I actually went and stayed there a few years ago just to annoy some people because I thought, you can imagine putting pictures up of me at Trump Turnberry. They were absolutely vitriolic.
Should we call Trumberry?
Yes, they should. But it's a beautiful setting, and he's absolutely right. Whenever you see these massive wind farms anywhere, I was quite shocked. I was down in Margate a few weeks ago for a wedding, and as you sort of walk up the hill to get to the top of the cliffs, all you can see in the distance, and it's over towards Southend, is this massive wind farm in the sea. And it just looks dreadful.
And as Trump rightly points out, wildlife are killed by these things. They're also biologically undegradable for a long time. They emit dangerous things into the ground. So you can't bury the blades. Interestingly, I saw
also they don't last forever either, which is the impression that you get from the Green lobby, that once you put them in, you never have to replace them. Well, that's not true.
They rust. I saw an interesting article which hasn't had much pickup actually last week in France. I think it is. They've unveiled a turbine that doesn't have any propeller blades. It's like in one of those air Dyson.
It's like
a James Dyson type thing you put your hands in. I don't know how it generates the air, but that's all they have. It's just basically a circle.
Are you sure it's not somebody who just sold the French a pup and gone,
maybe.
Don't
James
worry.
Dyson is properly English. Sold the French something. But that sounds like a rather good development, actually, if it has no propeller blades at all and if it's a lower height. So there are other solutions out there, it seems.
There may well be. Let's have a look at Trump talking about it.
And the other thing I say to Europe, we will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us. They're killing the beauty of our scenery, our valleys, our beautiful plains. And I'm not talking about airplanes. I'm talking about beautiful plains, beautiful areas in the United States. And you look up, and you see windmills all over the place. It's a horrible thing. It's the most expensive form of energy. It's no good. They're made in China, almost all of them. When they start to rust and rot in 8 years, you can't really turn them off. You can't bury them. They won't let you bury the propellers, the props, because there's a certain type of fiber that doesn't go well with the land. That's what they say. The environmentalists say you can't bury them because the fiber doesn't go well with the land. In other words, if you bury it, it will harm our soil. The whole thing is a con job.
I love it when he says, that's what people say. It's like people say, I'm the greatest president ever. That's what they say. I don't know. Mr. Trump's comments, it says in the Telegraph, on wind energy are bound to complicate Mr. Trump's meeting with Sir Keir Starmer, who has staked Britain's future energy supply on wind. Yes, he has.
He's got a lot.
He's got plenty of it.
Enough hot air of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't you just love when Trump speaks like that in front of other world leaders, giving them a right telling off, and they just have to sit there in silence and take it all in? I think it's glorious.
It is great, isn't it? Ursula von der Leyen didn't have much to say for herself at all. So, yeah, I mean, people have been complaining about it back in America, saying he's on holiday. But he's not on holiday. He's meeting all these people, isn't he?
Well, it's also, I jokingly called him an emperor earlier on, but it's only emperors who get to have meetings with various foreign leaders on foreign soil.
Yeah.
He's in Britain holding court in his ballroom.
Exactly.
And the world's leaders are coming to pay homage to him.
Yeah. And they're all loving it, and they all love their moment of fame with him.
Including, apparently, by pure coincidence, who knew that Liz Truss was a keen golfer, because she and her daughter are golfing up in Turnberry. Amazing coincidence.
Very good. There we are. She only just took it up last week, obviously. It's coming up to 6:51. We've got more for you coming up, including that business on EasyJet yesterday, where some mad bloke suddenly came running out the toilets declaring that he had a bomb, and he was taken on by some of the passengers because they were heading to Glasgow. They don't like terrorists much in Glasgow, so you think he chose the wrong thing. We'll bring you that, plus much more, coming next. Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 5 minutes to 7. The first hour is nearly over. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo's been here helping us with what's been going on in the papers. A couple of other funny stories to tell you about in a moment, including a grumpy bishop who kicked some people out of his church because they were making too much noise, even though it was a planned event. Let's have a look, though, first at down under what's going on, because we mentioned John Healey, the Secretary of State for Defence, who's been talking about taking on Taiwan. Here he is with David Lammy, visiting the Carrier Strike Group in Darwin. Have a look at this. And that's supposed to be their version of Top Gun, you think?
Well, he hasn't got the sunglasses, but I think he's got proper shoes on this time,
That's
David Lammy. He did seem to have dress shoes on for once. But what's he talking about centuries? Australia was founded in 1901.
Yeah.
Hasn't been centuries. I mean, Australia are great allies of us, fought side by side, but I think he needs a bit of a history lesson on that front. I'd be much more impressed, actually, if he was showing fleets of drones.
Yeah.
I think we need a lot more drones. As you know from Ukraine how easy it is to take out an entire fleet with a few drones, actually.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's have a look at this story, which is in the Mail today, page 5. You're in my house, so this is a terrible racket. Please leave now. Disgruntled Bishop Jonathan Baker, who's the Bishop of Fulham, took to the stage, grabbed a microphone off a load of bemused performers who were supposed to be, sort of the City Academy Voices Choir, to playing before an audience of about 300 strong. He threw them all out. Yeah, so get lost.
This is definitely an and finally story. There he is, standing in his dressing gown on full stage with no concept that perhaps people will be videoing him, and you're going to be on the front pages the next day. The Bishop of Fulham, who apparently doesn't realise that his venue gets booked out for concerts once in a while.
Yeah.
The Bishops of Fulham used to have a palace in Fulham, which is still there, where probably wants to go back into that because he's now stuck above a church in Holborn. But the choir quite rightly says... the comments about the racket did not sit well, because I think we sing rather well, actually. But I don't know what the male equivalent of a Karen is, but I think probably he qualifies for that title as well.
It's a very British story, though, isn't it? It's a sort of could only happen here.
What is it, Barbara? Get out of my church, like Barbara Windsor in EastEnders.
Yeah, it's like get out of my pub.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
from the Keir Starmer clip I'm thinking of as well. We forgot to mention earlier, but we should mention it, the Department of Work and Pensions advert over the weekend, which caused a bit of consternation, for a Sharia court job up in Didsbury, near Manchester.
This is outrageous. You know, there's only one law in this country, that is British law. This is not the United Kingdom of Great Britannistan and Northern Pakistan.
No.
This is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. We're already the West's leader in Sharia courts. We have 85 Sharia courts. We are sending Sharia ambassadors around the world to train up them in creating Sharia courts.
Brilliant.
It's a complete disgrace. Women are getting married in these Sharia court marriages and not in civil marriages.
And so they're not legal.
They're not legal, so there's no way we can enforce when they're being abused by their partner, want to get out of this relationship. We have no legal means by which to interfere in those things. There needs to be an outright ban on all Sharia law, British law for British people.
Yeah.